Welcome to the Farm to Fork Soundbite mini-series. We are joining you live from the Rabobank Farm to Fork conference in Sydney on the 23rd of March 2023 to share with you the key themes and insights from throughout the day. My name's Voznesenski. I'm an agricultural analyst in Rabobank's Sydney office, but you can find me all around the country these days. And you can also find Vítor all around the country these days. Vítor Pistóia is our farm inputs analyst, also covering land values. Hi, Vítor.
Hey, Dennis, nice. And we are both on Twitter. You can check us. I'm Vítor_Agri. And you, Dennis?
I am Voz_Dennis. Thanks for picking that up because I always forget.
Yeah, and we do produce a lot of content for Twitter as well. So it's good when you're working in the fields to check the latest news that we put there.
Oh, definitely. We do videos, we do podcasts, and we stick it all on there. And if it's just like a little graph on what's happening to fertilizer prices, what's happening to grain prices.
Or a drone video.
Or a drone video. Oh, yeah, I take my drone everywhere now.
So, Dennis, today we saw a lot of content, a lot of clients around. Big event after 4 years. We are doing Farm to Fork. And first, we are going to speak about circularity, circular economy, and the things that we have saw today about making things last as long as they can, think of new approaches to some kind of waste, let's put this way. What are the big highlights we can provide to our listeners?
Well, there's a couple of these, and usually we're very specific on our points, and we don't and a lot. But since we're all doing this live, and we've just taken down notes literally while we're at the conference, I'm going to be scrolling through my phone. You're going to be looking at your notes, and I'm going to go through the things I've seen. I've seen three main things, and I'll go through one by one, and I'll see if you have any comments or things to add. So the first one was Brad Egan. He was a speaker. He was a young Australian Farmer of the Year, and he was talking about, for example, increased use of data for decision making instead of making gut feel decisions. And that one of the examples he gave is soil amelioration, so trying to improve their soils to get more productive with less resources. So for example, their rainfall has been declining, but at the same time, because of them improving their soils, they have actually been able to increase their yields over the last couple of years. He talked also a lot about full implementation of precision agriculture, so being able to, again, use less and have either the same yield outcomes or better outcomes. So use less agrochemical because you're being more specific of how you use it. Use less fertilizer because you're being more specific about how you use it. And like with a lot of speakers today, it all comes back to the technology and being able to utilize it as much as you can to get the best benefit, both for yields, but also into the sustainable future that we're heading.
Yeah, and another topic that I like about that talk was that some people just take for granted, my soil is bad or I have this kind of soil problem. But actually, he faced the situation in another way. He saw, I have a sandy soil, but then I have some clay deposits underneath that. So let's try to explore that. So that is really circular because something that is 5 meters below ground, he's using to improve the topsoil. So that's another approach to circularity on farming.
Yeah, and of course, it's not free to do this. It was expensive, but he went back and he said, okay, let's look at the data. Let's see, let's make checks and balances. Let's do the calculations. Let's see if this is economically viable to do. And it was, and they've got good outcomes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I also saw, and I'm going to leave to you because you're the grain and oilseeds analyst, but there's some also circularity around barley and brewery we listened today. Yeah,
so part of the circularity talk is not just about sustainability from an environmental point of view, but also sustainability from an economic point of view or operational point of view. And this same speaker, he delivers barley to his local brewery and they make beer out of it. And it means that maybe if they would be less dependent on overseas markets to where they send their barley. So, for example, we all know what happened with China and anti-dumping tariffs on Australian barley. The more we can produce locally, the more value add we can have locally, the less reliant we are on what happens overseas. Of course, there's a limit to that because in reality, our population is quite small and a lot smaller than we need to consume everything we produce. Yeah. And if we produce all the beer here and we try to export it somewhere else, well, that'll run into competition with all the beer they're trying to produce in Southeast Asia. Maybe they don't want to actually import it. Now, there's all those arguments against it, but I think to the most that we can, we should be able to utilize what we produce locally in terms of the raw materials and utilize that for end consumer goods. And that's part of the whole circular economy.
But that's quite good because that is one of the concepts behind circularity, that's closing the loop. So instead of dispatching the barley somewhere 10,000 kilometers away, he's doing locally. Yes, it's not a great demand, but if everyone does its share, we can solve the problems and the challenges that we have ahead of us. And now I would like to mention another one that we saw today, that was the Great Wrap. That's also an outstanding example on circularity, that they are doing plastic, let's put this way, wraps from potato peel. So something that was going to landfills or to be used as a biological fertilizer in some farms, they are processing it through technology that they acquire with a partnership with a university that's also closing the loop, work with your local stakeholders. And they're producing this wrap that is renewable and is solving a major waste issue. So that example, it's quite good on circular economy, Dennis.
Yeah, so I think they were called Great Wrap. They were the speakers were Julia and Geordie Kay, and yeah, it was quite interesting. I mean, it's with all of these things, it's also interesting, and we haven't had a chance to look at it, but the economics of these things. So as we move into the future, it's going to become more economical to do more of these things, but we still have to get there. So it's going to take time.
And even on the investment point of view, that's a great value creation. So you have waste, and you do something that you can trade with people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very good. So Dennis, do you have anything else to bring to us on circular economy?
I have one thing, and it's about reducing pollution and waste, or I guess it falls under that. So we had Luke Chandler, the CEO of John Deere Australia, chat about how they see the future and the future of technology in all their machinery. And they had this interesting line where they said farming and trying to be more efficient was all initially, it was about a farm level view. Then it started to get down to a paddock view. So you knew you had to do X, Y, and Z to improve your efficiency on this paddock, and you didn't have to do it on that paddock, or you had to do it differently. And now it's getting down to the perspective of a specific area in that paddock, and then eventually it'll be to the specific plant. So you'll have the machinery going through and knowing that, okay, this plant needs this plant needs this, and we'll apply accordingly to be as productive as possible. And they were giving the example of they're going to have and again, I'm going back to the point of where I'm reading this from my notes, it's going to allow you to make decisions as you are, for example, sowing. So when you're sowing, you're going to have the sprayer and the planter together, and they're going to be analyzing what this particular little area needs. When they put the seed on the ground, they know this soil type in this particular centimeter by centimeter square needs this, and that's what they'll put in. And the further we get to that, the further we go into that, the more productive we get and the more efficient we get with the use of fertilizer and chemical. They gave some examples of how much in their studies they've been able, or their test cases they've been able to reduce fertilizer and chem use. I'll let the listeners go have a look themselves, and I won't quote them because I don't want to screw their numbers up. Yeah. But it's quite substantial, and not only is it beneficial from a cost perspective, but right now there's this massive drive, especially from Europe, to reduce emissions by 2030 in agrochemical use and fertilizer use, and it may be about not reducing agricultural production, but just being more efficient with the resources we have to make it.
And that is another point of circular economy, that's reducing waste or useless inputs and energy that will not provide value on the supply chain. So that's a very good, and everything behind all the topics behind the circular economy examples we gave today, there is a strong share of technology, and we have to face technology as something that it will help us to solve all the problems. And during the day, we saw other examples of technology. So let's go to this part, Dennis. Let's do a summary on the day, and I would like to highlight something that I think it was really important during the day. The first one was the talk of Jan Lamberts on the 10 topics on the short and medium term. So a lot of comments over economics and on politics. We are living in volatile world. So it was very good to listen, especially for everyone that was here, to get this knowledge from a global strategy that see the whole picture of the business, how they are going. And also we saw some good examples from another clients, like the Farmer of the Year for Australia, the Farmer of the Year for New Zealand. There was a lot of young people, like the youth of our age. We are young. For those that doesn't know us, we are below 40, so we are comparable to them, and that's good to see, because succession is also another major problem that Australia and New Zealand face. Replace the farmers and transmit the knowledge, share the knowledge. So these are the two highlights that I would like to make from today, of course, and I think we're going to cover more.
Yeah, look, yes, everything we looked at today was really interesting. The presenters were really interesting, but I want to bring your attention to a couple of things and why I think events like these are important. A lot of the people here are farmers. Yes, we have industry participants, but a lot of people here are farmers. And farming, if you take a step back, is quite an isolating job to do. You're in the middle of Australia. You don't have the ability to communicate to a lot of people in your day-to-day activities. And what events like this do is they allow you to talk to people who are similar-minded, do similar jobs to you. And I think that's a really special thing. Yes, they're here to learn, but in reality, it's also about building networks. And I'll give you an example. I was in a conversation this morning with a farmer from New Zealand, who's actually the representative of growers of crops in New Zealand, right next to an Iowa farmer who crops soy and corn. And that was right next to a Western Australian farmer, also a cropping farmer. And they were all discussing that they all had similar issues. They had different solutions, but it was interesting that an event like this, it can bring all these people together. And from my perspective, that's the most international farming conversation I've ever had, having someone from New Zealand, from the US, from Australia, and everyone learning from each other.
Yeah, and this bringing people together, it's one of Rabobank themes. We bring people together to farm together, to do the energy transition, to bank for food. So I think that in the end of the day, we are doing, because we are recording this live as well, we're going to see more talks now coming on after this podcast, and the feeling that I have is mission accomplished. People came together and they are sharing knowledge, and we are doing our role.
And on that note, Vítor, I think we should start wrapping this up. It's a good note to wrap up on, that we're all doing this together.
Because it's beer time.
It is beer time. Again, you can find us on Twitter at Vítor.
Victor_Agri.
And at Voz_Dennis. I'm actually also on TikTok, for those who are on TikTok, the three of you out there.
You're ahead of me, Dennis.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up on that. Thanks for listening.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.